Hello. Now it's time to invite distinguished keynote speakers and the moderator of the plenary session. First, please allow me to introduce Professor Ebru Günlü Küçükaltan to moderate the session. And then I will invite our distinguished guest speakers. I will introduce our guest speakers in alphabetical order according to their surnames. First, Professor Cihan Çobanoğlu. Professor Çobanoğlu is the McGibbon Endowed Chair Professor of the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management in the Mulman College of Business at the University of South Florida. He also serves as the director of the M3 Center for Hospitality Technology and Innovation. He is also currently serving as the president of Association of North America Higher Education International. He is the editor of the Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Technology, editor of Journal of Global Business Insights, editor of Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Management, coordinating editor of Advances in Hospitality and Tourism Research, associate editor of Tourism Review. His research involves the use of impact and technology in the hospitality industry. Welcome, Professor Çobanoğlu.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Professor Tanya Mihalic is a full professor at the University of Ljubljana. She is a regular member of the Academic Unit for Economics, as well as an associate member of the Academic Unit for Management and Organization at the SEBLU. She is also a coordinator of the Tourism Master Program and head of Erasmus Mundus European Master in Tourism Management and head of the Institute for Tourism at SEBLU. Welcome, Professor Mihalic.
Welcome.
Professor Nina Katrin Preben is a professor at UiT, the Arctic University of Norway, and at USN, University of Southeast Norway. Her research focuses particularly on the tourist decision and experience processes, where co-creation of value for hosts and guests are in focus. She has been a part of 25 business boards and has a long history in cooperating with the tourism industry. She is also co-editor of 3 academic journals: Journal of Business Research, Journal of Travel Research, and International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management. Welcome, Professor Prebensen. Professor Joseph Stergy is a management psychologist, Virginia Tech Real Estate Professor of Marketing at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and the State University in the US, and extraordinary professor at the Workwell Research Unit of Northwest University in South Africa. He has published extensively in the areas of consumer behavior and marketing, business ethics, and quality of life. Welcome, Professor Stergy. And last but not least, Professor Serena Volo is an associate professor of marketing at the Faculty of Economics and Management of the Free University of Bozen. She is the program director of the Bachelor in Tourism, Sport and Event Management and the vice director of the Competence Center in Tourism Management and Tourism Economics, TOMT. She is also editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Culture, Tourism and Hospitality Research published by Emerald. Her research interests include tourism marketing, consumer behavior in tourism, innovation, and competitiveness in tourism. Welcome, Professor Volo. And now I'm giving the stage to our moderator, Professor Ebru Günlü Küçükaltan. Thank you. Professor, you're unmute. You're muted. Can you please unmute yourself?
Sure. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Dr. Doğan, for your lovely presentation and announcements and your kind support as always. I know that you are jet-lagged, but your energy is always at the top. Well, dear distinguished keynote speakers and our audience, I would like to welcome you to all our plenary session of this virtual conference. And I believe that we are more and more getting used to those kinds of virtual conferences. As a member of the organizing committee, I can assure you that there is as much effort, if not more, put into organizing this conference as it would be needed to physically bring you all together in Turkey. And that's why in advance, I would like to congratulate all of my colleagues in the organizing committee for their valuable contributions and their effort though. And as Dr. Doğan announced, we are here to discuss the new trends in tourism and what is expected to shape the future of our sector. And in today's world, although we often cry out for a better world, we also neglect our responsibilities and duties. It's the Mother Earth who shows that. And she really reminds us that there is a lot to be done by individuals and of course by all the societies all throughout the world for a better world. And we know that the global warming, the natural disasters like the earthquakes, the tsunamis that we are all used to, the forest fires, the floods and hurricanes, these are all the headlines, especially in 2020. And now we have COVID-19. This is the reason why we transformed this conference into a virtual one, and it's scaring a bit. And as academics, it's our responsibility to discuss what needs to be done for the better world and to encourage the policymakers to take the necessary actions. And I believe that this session is bringing together, especially our distinguished keynote speakers, each of whom will approach the future of tourism from a different perspective. And it will provide us with valuable information and knowledge. This is what I'm sure about. And while listening to our keynote guests, I think we should remind ourselves that COVID-19 proved us that the future is not too far. And whatever actions suggested for a better and sustainable world as well as tourism should be taken immediately. And I also believe that our keynote speakers will offer us new food for thought, which we may use in our research projects in the near future. And before we start our session with our first keynote speaker, I would like to remind you about the session rules. Each of our guests will have approximately 20 minutes for their presentations. And I suggest that we first listen to our guests, and once all the presentations are completed, afterwards we may then use whatever remaining time we have for the questions and the answers at the end of the session. And the audience may arise their questions. They have two choices, both by unmuting them and or by writing down their questions through the chat box. Okay, let's start then. According to the list I have been offered, our first keynote speaker is Professor Dr. Joseph Stergy. He will be underlying the psychological process of the consumers and how they compare their perception of the brand personality with their own self-concept. And I know that Professor Stergy has numerous publications on these topics. That's why I look forward to listening to Professor Stergy and give the floor. But in our case, it's not the floor, it's the screen to him. Yes, Professor Stergy.
Well, thank you so much for this nice introduction. Let me start out by sharing the screen. Sedan, what do you see on your side? Do you see the full slide or do you see two slides?
Actually, Professor, we see two slides.
Oh, okay. So I need to switch then. Okay, how about now?
It's perfect, Professor. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, well, this presentation is about self-congruity, or sometimes we talk about it in terms of the research on self-image congruence and consumer behavior. I've been doing quite a bit of research on this topic since 1970, in the late 70s. Actually, that was based on my dissertation, and I pursued this line of research for many years. Let me try and give you an idea of what this is about. So in order to position this idea of self-image congruence or self-congruity in the context, in an overall marketing context, we usually talk about brand equity. Brand equity, let's say in the context of tourism, you can talk about equity in relation to a tourist destination. That means, again, we're very much interested as marketers in terms of generating brand awareness, or in this case, it would be awareness of the tourist destination. Brand image. Now, this is the concept that we want to concentrate on. So we'll come back to that. Brand attitude, meaning that, again, people should ultimately have a favorable opinion or a favorable attitude towards the tourist destination. Brand preference, meaning that they would form a preference or make a preference decision about one tourist destination versus another. Ultimately would come and visit that tourist destination in terms of trial and purchase. Brand consumption would be experiencing the tourist destination itself. Brand satisfaction would be satisfaction in relation to the tourist destination. A brand repeat purchase would be, again, visiting the tourist destination repeatedly or frequently. Brand loyalty would be essentially feeling loyal to that particular tourist destination. And ultimately, word of mouth in terms of referral, making positive referral to others to visit the tourist destination. So self-image congruence kind of fits in the context of brand image. So what do we mean by brand image? When we talk about brand image, we talk about how consumers perceive a specific tourist destination in terms of several dimensions: functional attributes, economic attributes, safety attributes, hedonic, moral, and symbolic attributes. And we can be focusing on symbolic attributes. Sometimes we talk about it in terms of brand user image. But functional attributes would be something like, why would I visit a tourist destination? Maybe I would visit a tourist destination for the cultural experience. That would be a sort of a functional attribute. The economic attributes would be how affordable it is, how much money I'm planning to spend there, and whether that would be a consideration in my decision making. Safety attributes, of course, especially in the context of the COVID pandemic, a lot of people tend to make decisions based on safety attributes, as you know, in relation to a tourist destination. Hedonic attributes would be things, what is my perception of the degree of sensory pleasure that I would get if I would visit that tourist destination, in terms of comfort, in terms of the pleasurable experience. Moral attributes would be things like whether that tourist destination is associated with something that is moral or immoral, and whether that would affect my decision making. For example, if we're talking about Muslim families, maybe from a very conservative background, they may think of a place, let's say maybe Anatolia, as being a beach place, but it's rowdy, and it's a lot of people are naked, and maybe again that would be their image, and therefore they would make a decision not to visit that place because of its moral attributes. Symbolic attributes, this is what we want to focus on, and this is why it's highlighted in red, and that is the kind of people that visit that place. So we're talking about the brand user image. the kind of person that would use this particular service or product. So what do we mean by that? Let's say if we're talking about in a place like Antalya, the image of the tourist destination would be something like people who go there are professional, young professional, sexy. They are essentially beach goers. So that may be the image associated with the kind of people that would visit that tourist destination. So the proposition that we've been hammering on for many, many years is the fact that the image associated with the brand user, the kind of person that would use this particular product or service, again, makes quite a bit of difference in the person's decision making. Okay, so let's focus on the brand user image. Let me give you examples of what we have in marketing. Let's say, look at Nike shoes. The whole Nike shoes campaign, builds on this image of the serious athlete, as you can see from this ad. Move more, move better. This is Nike. So the image associated with Nike shoes is essentially that of the serious athlete, the kind of person who would use this particular product. Now, the entire Macintosh advertising campaign was very much built on this creative type. That means they're trying to show that the kind of person that would use the Macintosh, now this is way back when the Macintosh was first introduced, is essentially a creative kind of person. You see from that picture, the kind of person who uses a Mac is young, sexy, creative, and the kind of person that would use a PC is sort of the old fogey type. So again, that's the whole campaign was built on the idea of the brand user image of a certain type. Now this is another ad for the Mustang. Now notice that want to be sexy. So you notice the transformation in that image, the transformation of a person who is again wearing a tie to being transformed through driving that Mustang into, again, being sexy. And as you can see, this whole campaign of the Mustang is designed to, again, instill an image of becoming sexy, note that. The Marlboro cigarettes is definitely the cowboy image. And if that would appeal to certain kinds of people, then ultimately that would influence consumer behavior. From a tourist destination perspective, Paris is very much associated with the brand user image of being romantic. People who are romantic, they want to engage in this kind of activity, being romantic. Then Paris is a sort of the ultimate destination. This is in the Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. Again, the typical image associated with that is the sort of the family that has young children. So that sort of gives you an idea of what we call the brand user image, which is at the very bottom of this model. So the idea then, brand user image ultimately affects all of these consumer behavior. And there's plenty of evidence that have demonstrated over the past 40-something years that we can actually predict consumer behavior using this idea of self-congruity. I'll come back to that. In terms of brand awareness, brand attitude, brand preference, brand trial purchase, brand consumption, brand satisfaction, brand repeat purchase, brand loyalty, and brand referral. So all of these are what you'll call the dependent variables, and self-congruity, which involves this brand user image, again, is made to predict these different consumer behavior variables, and quite successfully. So what do we mean by self-congruity then? Self-congruity is the match between the consumer self-concept and the brand user image. And so when we talk about the consumer self-concept, we break things down in terms of 4 dimensions: the actual self, the ideal self, the social self, the ideal social self. And I'll talk a little bit more about these. So it is the match between the consumer self and how people see themselves, like to see themselves, how they are perceived, how they think they are perceived by others, and how they like to be perceived by others. These are essentially the different dimensions of the self-concept. And they interface, they sort of match or mismatch the brand user image to cause this actual self-congruity, meaning that there's a match between the actual self and the brand user image, the ideal self, again, the same kind of thing. So the greater the match, the greater the predictive power of these variables to the consumer behavior. So let's be a little bit more specific to try and understand those specific dimensions and the underlying self-concept motives that drive consumers to act in certain ways. So we break things down in terms of what we call the private self and the public self. So the private self is, this is the image that I have of myself and I like to become, to be. So this is something very private, which is very different from the public self, and that is, it's the image that I believe others see me. It is my public persona, so to speak. So when we talk about actual self-congruity and ideal self-congruity, that, these 2 variables belong to what you call the private self. So actual self-congruity is the match between the actual self, which is how I actually see myself, and the brand user image. And that match ultimately impacts, a variety of consumer behaviors, from brand awareness to brand attitude, all the way down to something like brand loyalty and brand referrals. So the underlying motive associated with what makes people approach a specific product or service as a function of this experience we call actual self-congruity is this underlying need for self-consistency. So what do you mean by self-consistency? People have a need, a psychological need, to make sure that the image of themselves is consistent with their behaviors, whatever the behavior is. And of course, we're interested in consumer behavior. And of course, in the context of tourism, it would be visiting something like visiting the tourist destination, or those variables associated with that. So the need to act in ways consistent with how I actually see myself. Now, this is very different from the ideal self-congruity, which is the match between the ideal self, how I like to become, and the brand user image. So this behavior, it influences consumer behavior through what we call the need for self-esteem. It is the need to act in ways to approach how I like to become. So people have certain ideal images of themselves, and therefore reducing the discrepancy between the actual self and the ideal self, again, would enhance self-esteem. So let's say visiting a place like Anatolia, again, a person wants to feel sexy and young and professional. If they would see that people that would go there to a place like Anatolia, again, that would enhance their self-esteem by doing so. The public self is very much driven by what we call social self-congruity, which is the match between social self, how I think others see me, and the brand user image. And again, the underlying source of motivation is social consistency, the need for social consistency. And that is the need to act in ways consistent with how others see me. So if other people see me as young, sexy, and professional, then ultimately, and I see the people that would go to a place like Anatolia would be exactly that, then I would feel motivated to visit a place like Anatolia. Ideal social self-congruity is the match between the ideal social self, how I like others to see me, and the brand user image. So that is driven by what we call the need for social approval, the need to act in ways to gain approval and avoid disapproval from others, especially significant others. So if people, you know, feel that they would think highly of me if I would go to a place like Anatolia, then again, that would make me feel motivated to visit such a place. So we have quite a bit of supportive evidence from the consumer goods arena, from automobiles, consumer magazines, alcoholic beverages, mobile phones, and of course, in the context of travel and tourism, again, we have plenty of studies that have documented this phenomena we call self-congruity. Again, studies with consumer services like tourist attractions, destinations, hotels, restaurants, and the like. From retailing, we've got plenty of evidence in relation to clothing stores, department stores, discount stores, shopping malls, and shopping centers. From housing and real estate, we have plenty of studies in relation to retirement communities and how this business of self-image congruence, or self-congruity for short, again, drives consumer behavior. Finally, again, we want to talk about how this concept of self-congruity is important in terms of theory development, in terms of research, in terms of the managerial implications. In terms of theory development, this self-congruity theory is essentially a theoretical foundation to try and explain many behaviors, including, of course, tourist and patron behavior in a sort of what you call a tourist or an HTM context. So the idea is that we can, although we were able to predict a variety of consumer behaviors, we can extend those consumer behaviors to areas. One of the areas of research that I've been getting into over the last many years is quality of life. Quality of life would be things like satisfaction, it would be stress, it would be health-related outcomes, it would be subjective well-being. Now we are developing extending the theory of self-congruity to help explain how people, when they visit a tourist destination, they don't feel good about it, but they also feel satisfied with their lives, meaning that such an experience, contributes to their life satisfaction, their personal happiness. So this is a foundation, a theoretical foundation that would allow us to predict quality of life types of variables. Research support, self-congruity research has proved to be highly predictive of consumer behavior outcomes, including important patron and tourist behavioral outcomes. And the idea is to be able to extend the model to include additional moderators, mediators, antecedents, and other behavioral outcomes. Let me just give you one example. Let's say, under what conditions would something like actual self-congruity would be more predictive of tourist behavior than something like maybe ideal self-congruity? So what are those conditions? How about the differences between the public self and the private self? What are those moderators that would help us, further explain more variance in the dependent variables, whatever it is, by including those moderators. Finally, we have managerial implications. And again, as I've showed you the ads at the very beginning, developing a whole ad campaign around the brand user image in such a way that would cause a match between the consumer self-concept and the brand user image ultimately leads or motivates people to feel good about the destination and of course make a host of decisions related to again that particular destination. On that note, if you're interested in references related to the research, there's a whole bunch of references and articles and books. So if you like a copy of those slides, don't hesitate to contact me. And again, the email address is essentially my last name, Stergy, by the way. It's pronounced Stergy, not Sergey. And,
Apologizes.
oh, no problem at all. All the time. Thank you very much for allowing me to, share my thoughts with you. Okay, now I
Thank
will.
you. Thank you very much, Professor Stergy, for the interesting presentation. And now we are ready for our keynote speaker, Professor Tanya Mihalic. She will be asking what is the paradigm between the sustainable and responsible tourism, which I'm so keen about finding more. And Professor, now it's your turn.
Thank you very much. I am sending you my regards from Ljubljana. It is good evening already, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to join this conference about tourism across the continents with a wonderful subtitle, Tourism for a Better World. The work that I do, it's in the field of sustainability and responsibility, and I am looking forward for the opportunity to present you my views, how these proceed in the direction of the better future and tourism for the better world. So the title of my keynote today is Quo Vadis Sustainable and Responsible Tourism? And the topic that I am addressing is Tourism for a Better World. And I will discuss the two illustrations of over-tourism and the COVID-19 pandemic and question the tourism sustainable paradigm that we have accepted. So I will start with a gap. Let me start, sorry. Do you see this? Let me start with the gap between the wonderful idea about the sustainability that we all know and the alarmingly unsustainable reality. So what is that so ethical, right, and just sustainability idea is not penetrating the real life as much as we expected? This has challenged my research and brought me from the researcher of the tourism ecology and sustainability also to the research field of the responsibility, which has been attached to the concept of the sustainability in order to address this gap. So what is going wrong in the implementation of the sustainability? Tourism also be actually responsible for the efficient implementation of the sustainability idea. Before I return to the concept of sustainable and responsible tourism, just let me take a very short journey through the development of the sustainability tourism paradigm in our field. Indeed, in 1987, the Brundtland Report and Our Common Future has been presented to the public, and constantly, immediately, the world politicians, world tourism leaders, international institutions, and governments embrace the idea of the sustainable development. Very soon, the tourism academia also followed. I think that the first one who has really applied the sustainable development idea to the tourism field was Edward Inskip in his book, Tourism Planning. Edward Inskip at the time has defined 5 sustainability pillars that needs to be fulfilled in order to make tourism development sustainable. These 5 pillars later somehow become 3 pillars of the main tourism sustainability paradigm: economic, socio-cultural, and environmental or natural. So the whole idea, the complete idea of the sustainability that Inskip has applied is not equally the same as the tourism paradigm that we live today. For illustration, I will give you just one element. Inskip said one of the pillars is also equity and equality in the development. I am not saying that the tourism has not addressed these issues over the years. I am not ignoring a lot of work in the field of pro-poor tourism or community-based tourism, and not even the research of my colleagues who have contributed to the field of just tourism and community-based tourism and life quality in the tourism destinations. What I am saying is that the tourism sustainability paradigm as we live it today is not touching on all the dimensions of the sustainability, and this equity and equality is just one illustration of it. What do I mean by tourism paradigm? I mean that this is the, I would say, state of the art, the world view on sustainable tourism development in this case, that we agree on and that we implement. The WTO study for 2019 has confirmed that all the countries today have a tourism developmental strategy which is based on the sustainability. So if this is the case, how does it come that there is a gap between the implementation? Because they also have agenda, instruments, and actions, and it's not working. What is it that is not working? So it is the responsibility of tourism in order to make the implementation of the sustainability into the real life possible. According to the welfare economics that I am taking from, for a society, for a community, in our case, for a tourism community, a certain stages of development must be reached in order to make tourism responsible, so actually implement it, because responsible tourism is based on the sustainability. It's sustainability in action. The first step on this path towards responsibility is the awareness. Awareness here means that we need to be aware of all the dimensions of sustainable development in order to be able to go to the second step, to adopt the agenda, and then to go to the third step, to adopt the action or tourism policy in order to actually make tourism sustainable. So the question here at this point is our tourism paradigm, as we live and implement it, really aware of all the elements of the sustainability that needs to be equally addressed in order to make this a more success story? And I will return to this. Now about the paradigm, tourism paradigm. It is how it is. The tourism paradigms, or any paradigm, is created and drafted in a certain point of time. And then the paradigm doesn't change from year to year because this is our global consensus view on something. The sustainable tourism paradigm, as it is coded by the WTO, we all know this definition. All the governments, destinations, academics are referring to the 3 pillars of this definition, which is also presented on the web pages of the WTO. This same definition, which is printed in a shorter version and also conceptual, a little bit longer version, has been drafted in 2005. It is already 15 years old. And then the tourism research has gone forward. The tourism reality has gone forward with over-tourism and with COVID pandemic. So the question is the paradigm that we still have is following, is it able to assist us to address these new challenges which are defined as unsustainable tourism challenges? So this is the question that I want to address, and what are all the elements of the full understanding of the sustainability that will equip us to, I would say, react ethically and responsibly to the challenges that we have. Another illustration of the tourism paradigm based on the definition of the WTO, that the definition of the WTO is mentioning not only the 3 pillars and the impact that are the mainstream paradigm. So the majority of the strategies and understanding is about the 3 pillars and ecological capacity. So the definition also mentioned the leadership, the governance, the management, the cooperation that is needed in order to proceed. And it explicitly mentioned what, by the way, also INSCIP has in one of his pillars, that the tourism, sustainable tourism development is based on the satisfaction of the visitors. In this regard, one may argue that this definition understanding is too much market oriented, because the visitor satisfaction is about market orientation, and this might open the door for boomerism and for the excessive growth of tourism that we have witnessed and has brought along the over-tourism to our table. So I will go now just to the short look, to have a short look on the over-tourism. As you remember, in 2017, almost all of the world media reported from the destinations all over the world about the new phenomena that was called over-tourism, about the destinations that were overrun in an unsustainable way, about unsustainable tourism development, about the irritation of the local residents, about the impact of the over-tourism, boomerism on the quality of life and the welfare of the destinations. This was nothing new for the tourism researcher, but it was new for the tourism paradigm that we were living. I just want you to remind on the tourism literature in the 5 decades, Doxey Irritation Index, Clausen and Knetsch, the law of diminishing returns of visitor satisfaction, Butler area life cycle of a tourist destination, our discussion on limits of acceptable change, other capacity discussions, mass tourism discussion, and not to go on. So the same old issues have been addressed again by over-tourism, but nevertheless for a very much different perspective, for the perspective of the social soft indicators. How many is too many? The number has never been found. And now here over-tourism is showing that too many is when the local residents or the visitors or whichever stakeholder is saying enough is enough. It is the irritation. It is a kind of socio-psychological, not ecological capacity that is here coming to the front to our attention. So I think that over-tourism has brought quite a lot to our discussion, and it has equipped academia again with the arguments against mass tourism, too much growth and too much impact, but very clearly from the aspect of the life quality of the local community and of the welfare that tourism for the better world should bring. And actually, the definition of the responsible tourism, in the sense that I have introduced, but by Goodwin, is that responsible tourism makes places better because it is the just and ethical tourism in the sense. So it is about the better world. And now to the pandemia, to the COVID-19 that has really hit the destinations and the community and the residents and also other stakeholders badly in 2020. It is not about over-tourism and too high numbers. It is quite the opposite. It is the under-tourism. But the common point is that this is so much unsustainable as the over-tourism was. But there was another dimension that really became very, very clear, that the tourism is also about the development, the welfare of the local destinations and the local residents, because the destinations and the people who are on the supply side were really hit by this COVID situation, and we all become aware of this very much. And now the COVID is opening two avenues for future development. One is recovery and back to old normal as soon as possible. And there is a very strong argument, because it's not, I mean, to watch this industry down, it is not really not a good and not an ethical picture. And the other discussion that we are also having is the reset of the old normal of tourism, and of course the recovery, but recovery in a sustainable and responsible way. So here I hope you see these figures that I have incorporated into my background.
A bit small.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Well, the paper that I have just published in Annals of Tourism Research about the challenge of the sustainability. So the question is, if tourism paradigm is well addressing the challenges of the over-tourism and the COVID pandemic, and if we understand that the main paradigm view is basically 3 pillars, capacity-based, and that this is a too narrow view. So what are the whole dimensions of the sustainability and responsibility that would help us to address and understand what we have learned from over-tourism and for the pandemic under-tourism? So the first pillar are the capacities, ecological capacities, environmental, economic, and socio-cultural. The second group are different, not from ecological economics or ecological tourism, but from the other disciplines, because the sustainability is very multidisciplinary issue. And this is sociology and psychology. I am not ignoring the geography and tourism, I don't know, space economics or whatever. It is also in there. But basically, my point that I'm trying to make now is in this socio-psychological capacity of the residents. The number has never been found how many is too many, but the irritation of the residents, the opinion of the residents, the attitudes of the residents towards tourism, they can tell us when too much is too much, and when this is not contributed to the life quality and the welfare of the destination, which is going back to the idea of the sustainability in the background of real sustainable development. And we are somehow not directly addressing in our strategies and implementation policies. So if we define sustainable tourism by all these capacities, also there is also socio-political capacity, but I'm not addressing this in my presentation. To understand the full dimensions of sustainable and responsible tourism, that the paradigm as we live it is not fully covering at the moment. So to conclude, what we have learned, just okay, tourism is no more just for the visitors and taking care of the visitor satisfaction in order to unlock the economic dimension of the tourism, because this is very market oriented. Second, tourism is no more just about the opportunities for the industry and growth and economic, I would say, main. We can discuss stakeholder capitalism and so on, but the essence idea, the point I am making is here in. Tourism is equally about the local residents, about their satisfaction and the welfare. And this has not been really seriously taken into account in the strategies and in the implementation. And I think that now the time has come that we may question and put to the test the tourism, mainstream tourism paradigm, so that we really unlock the tourism for a better world. And the last one, the last slide is that if over-tourism had not happened, tourism academic schools of thought would have much less new relevant evidence why boomerism and over-tourism is not the option that we want to follow if we are talking about sustainable and responsible tourism, because this was a renaissance of what we were saying so many years in tourism already. And second, if over-tourism pandemic had not happened, we would never really fully realize how important the aspect of the local communities, residents, supply side for tourism, how much does it matters for the welfare and for our lives. And now we have both together, and the COVID is also working in the direction that we are so low now, we are so much on our knees. So forget, just think about the recovery, and many may argue we need to go back to the old reality because it was much better, more ethical even as compared to what we have today. The whole destinations might be dependent on the tourism development and income. And on the other hand, if we really understand the full dimension of over-tourism and COVID under-tourism, then probably we will try to go the way of sustainable and responsible tourism, and it would be a real cost and a pity if we will not be able, or if we will freeze or put aside the path that we have at the end of the day, even if with the old paradigm already started, just to add the new dimensions and go forward. So this was what I wanted to present, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Professor. What you have expressed just reminded me about an issue. I think the pandemic is a crisis, but it's just going to be an opportunity to unlock the motto of the conference. Hopefully, I hope we can understand and we can learn something, so it can raise our awareness. Thank you so much. You have already questions, but we are going to give the scene to the questions and answers at the end. So I'm going to raise the questions at the end of the session. And our third presenter is Professor Serena Volo. She will give her speech on the issue of research methods for visual big data by highlighting both the opportunities and the challenges. And the screen is yours, Professor Volo.
Okay. Thank you. I will now share the screen with you. I hope you can see the screen. Okay, 1 second, please. Okay. Okay, here I am. Although we had tried this before, of course, something didn't work. Okay, I hope you can now see the screen and me as well. Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers, all of them, those who are chairing the session and organizing this session of keynote speakers, but also those that invited me to this interesting conference. And of course, being interested in tourism and being interested in visuals, I can tell you that I would have very much wanted to be in site. I would have wanted very much to be in Turkey with all of you. I had already mental pictures of this conference, like everybody else does when we travel. We do create our own mental pictures. So tourism is a lot about images, it's a lot about visuals. And I would like to take you on a short journey today on how can we profit from the availability of visuals, but how can we do that in a smart way? So many of you, I have noticed many of the participants right now that are following the keynote sessions are from Turkey. So I would like to do a little experiment. I initially thought to do it about Turkey, but let's do the following. Can you please close your eyes for 30 seconds, all of you participants, attendees, close your eyes for 30 seconds and think about your last vacation. Just think about it, few seconds. And I will close my eyes and think about Turkey and how wonderful it could have been to be there, look at the sights and enjoy the wonderful food and the people and meet all of you in person. Okay, now it's done. 30 seconds have passed. And now that you reopen your eyes, or even if you were maybe cheating and you kept your eyes open, did you visualize what you were thinking about? I think so. Unless people are born with visual impairments, which is a different situation, we all visualize our experiences. We all visualize our thoughts one way or another. And in tourism, this is even more important. So what we are going to do together is trying to exploit the potential of visuals blended in tourism and tourism blended in visuals. So let me move into the agenda of this presentation. I will briefly go through what do we mean by visuals in our field. What are the research paradigms already used and normally in research, and how can they be beneficial when we look into visual data? What has changed in our research landscape because of the fast and large availability of visual data? What are the opportunities that scholars and also the industry can find in these visual data, and what are some of the challenges? We will discuss also together some of the difficulties in using visual data. Of course, you will agree with me that if we're talking about visuals, we must start with the work of the late John Hurry, 1990, about the tourist gaze. In the work of Hurry, a few key points. Of course, it's an extensive work and there are different versions of it, and it has evolved with time. But some of the critical points are still all true, and even if they're a little different, they were very informative of even today's development in visuals. The point is that the visual nature of tourism experience is located in an unusual and very distinctive environment. This is a visual environment in which the tourist is a foreigner most of the time, or it's simply not used to a certain environment or landscape, tourism landscape in the most complex way of defining it. And it's a very distinctive also object or subject of the visual. So in this respect, tourists spend a limited amount of time in a destination, and therefore they try to capture as much as possible of this unusual and distinctive environment. While they do that, they do it through some socially learned ability. Hurry says in a work of 2011 also that there is no such thing as pure and innocent eye. We look through things according to our past experiences, according to the way we frame ourselves in our culture, in our society. So looking into objects, artifacts of tourism, iconic places, a wonderful landscape in Turkey, we will do it by means of our socially learned ability and interpret it. The visual nature of tourism experience is also relative nature. Tourists tend to compare. They put the object of their desire, of the tourism desire, in relation to their daily life, in relation to other objects that they have seen and enjoyed during other vacations. So there is this concept of it's opposite. It's a relationship often to an opposite experience or visual. Then the last point that I like to take with you is one in the original work on 1990, in which John Henry talks about the seen and the being seen. And this could not be more true today. Or in his mind, what is important, but also in the work of other sociologists, what is very important when we travel is that we take a little memento of a certain spot, and when we do it because we want to bring a memory back home. Maybe in 20 years, I would like to see how I looked past in the past, but we also want to share with the others, I have been there. I've been in Turkey. I have been at the conference. I met those people, or I have seen a certain site. So those are very important points that are embedded in the human nature, but that today digital world makes even more interesting, because now we are sharing, and you know very well, we are all taking our selfies and sharing them. So we want to be seen, and we want to be seen by others in a certain touristic destination, and immediately. This has a positive effect, and of course some negative effects. Those effects are to be seen in different perspectives according to whether we are looking into the industry or the science of tourism. So we can certainly discuss them at length. But let's go into actually what are these visuals. So if I have to say, before talking about who produces and who uses visuals, let me tell you what are the visuals in tourism. Now, I will make an experiment, because I'm usually, if I would be there, I would be standing and walking and be very active. So I want to do the same. Can you see this? Oh, barely. It's a postcard. I sent this postcard to my grandparents from Paris in 1990. This is a tourism visual. This is a memento. Okay, of course, my grandparents are not here anymore, and I got this as a memento of a memento. Okay, so I can remember them and my experience through this visual. We have visuals like that in tourism. We have lots of them. I've been to Florida in 2001, 2002. I was a Fulbright scholar there. And of course, I got back to Florida many times with my daughter. I have many pictures, but I'm not going to share them with you. But look at this. This is a map of Florida from the National Geographic. Maybe difficult, but there is a wonderful seaside in Miami. This is also visuals in tourism. Another postcard for my host. This is Turkey, of course. Okay, so I couldn't miss that, my previous trips. So postcards, maps, brochures, very unique objects, the Grand Canyon. So Irving says we create a relationship with extraordinary visuals and also ordinary visuals. In tourism, it's mostly extraordinary. So I want to see the Grand Canyon. This is a unique object, the Eiffel Tower. It's a unique object. Sometimes people would like to take pictures of some ordinary aspects of lives. And we have seen that many Airbnb users, for example, they share pictures of Instagram about their stay in the Airbnb. They share the daily life in Paris with their host while they go to the French bakery. So there are aspects of ordinary and extraordinary in the visuals that are shared in tourism, and particularly nowadays on the social media. Now, all of these different aspects, of course, this is the last very important tool. It's my smartphone, where all of my mementos are now stored, and which we share on social media, lots and lots of visuals, pictures, videos, and so on. So as users, we are certainly also nowadays producing, but traditionally, let's say traditionally, who were the producers and the users of visuals? They were different, they had different perspectives, and you could easily distinguish between the private and the public tourism operators, travel, hospitality organization, businesses of destination marketing organizations, and the way they used visuals to communicate was advertising. So it was a constructed visual, constructed for the purpose of reaching the tourists. Then you could distinguish individuals or groups, so the individual pictures and also collections of pictures. So this is also a different way of looking at pictures, but it's also a way of looking at who takes the pictures. Individuals take pictures often for their own interest, personal interest, and associations, organizations, they take pictures for other aims. A very typical differentiation is also the one between residents, stakeholders, and tourists. And it's one differentiation on which I have always something to say, because I am today a resident and tomorrow a tourist. Of course, at the moment, we have to all hope that we will be again tourists, but our roles are interchangeable. So we, those who are lucky and can afford to travel, of course, and those who can allow themselves even more vacations in 1 year, they are different, let's say, producers of pictures at different times, and they also sometimes use and share them. So from the perspective of always being, let's say, a producer organization or a producer as tourist, now the tourist is also a producer of online images that are often used to communicate, so that we are creating user-generated content, user-generated visual content. So these, let's say, the barriers between the two producers, users are always very, very moving barriers, I would say. Then, of course, there is another category of professionals, mostly professionals, so photographers for the National Geographic, photographers for newspapers, magazines, for any type of media, the opinion leader, and last but not least, the influencers. The way they take pictures, the way they elaborate pictures, the way they trim pictures is totally different. There's a different perspective than what we used to do when we were maybe a little younger with our own pictures. And those pictures have different effects on the marketplace in tourism. So looking at different aspects might be helpful for whoever is interested in doing research in visuals. Despite you have seen the great variety of tools that we have and how tourism and visuals are really very much related, research shows that there is very little attention in tourism science on research methods and different approaches to study visuals. Why is that? There are reasons for that, clearly. And to illustrate the reasons, I like to just quickly introduce paradigms that are mostly used in our research, the positivism and the post-positivism on one side, and the critical studies and constructionism on the other side. In most of our research, a positivist approach is often taken by, I would say, the main tourism journals particularly. For some years, things are changing. There is a shift, and that's very good. But the paradigm for many years was the one of the positivists, taken by the hard sciences, There is only one reality. There is an objective way to measure it, and there are quantitative methods to do so. So in this landscape of post-positivism, which is a little less rigid, visuals tend to be perceived as a way to capture the reality, and there is very little interpretation. There is no interpretation. They are objective, and they should be used as a scientific data in an objective way. There is no reference to the researcher. On the other side, there are the critical constructivists, for whom there are multiple realities. There are subjective ways to study realities, and there is a large use of qualitative methods. So there is interpretation, there is the possibility to create different realities. Often in tourism, visuals have been studied by this group of scholars, and this has led to a misrepresentation of the possibilities that we have in exploiting visuals, because it has not been taken, let's say, too seriously. So there are recent works that claim that there is a need to do more about visual research. So now, what is that we can do more? There is a quote here that says, "Today everything exists to hand in a photograph." Now, if we would be in a class all together in a meeting room, I would ask, and I ask you to think about, when do you think this was written? Like 10 years ago? Last year? More in the past? Well, since I cannot hear your answers, but you know this is very true, I'll give you the answer. This was written by Sontag in 1979 on a contribution in a book on photography. So today we could use, and I took the liberty to use this sentence to say that today everything exists to hand up in a selfie or on Instagram, and to be shared with your friends on WhatsApp and any other social media. Okay, so as you see, you know, from 1709, where everything was to be taken in photos, we're not that far, or they were really thinking ahead. The tools have changed. The way we change pictures, so we save them, we store them, it's certainly different. Okay, so what then next? Well, the traces that we leave as tourists when we take pictures are an invaluable source of data. They are data for us. There are few papers already on, maybe even 5-6 years ago, on the use of pictures on Flick, or now more recently on Instagram. So everybody's trying to trace what tourists do through the pictures. Photos and videos can be primary source of data for research, but also secondary. So for us, big visual data are certainly an available secondary source of data. We have seen also some researchers who have worked with photos and videos as primary. So participants use generated photography, for example. These are very sophisticated research approaches, simple in one way because you make the tourists participate to your research, but also very demanding. Others have simply downloaded as many pictures as they could from Instagram and tried to use them. So in what we can see from the paradigms we have seen before, an image can be used as an evidence, so evidence of how the landscape's changing, a record of it, but also as a constructed reality. So the interpretation of the person who took the picture, the idea he or she had in mind, and so on. So there is a lot to do in terms of research. How can we capture those different perspectives? Some of the opportunities that are emerging, so for us as scholars, come exactly from this large data set. We can collect them. Some of them are easier to collect. Other online, let's say, social platforms have made it more difficult to collect them, but we can still study them even in a different way. We have to be a little creative to study pictures. Then there is an availability of more powerful analytics tools. So there are softwares like Python, where we can do analysis related to also downloading, collecting big data and visual data. There are more analytics of big companies. So there is a set of tools available for those who want to dig into big data, and some are applicable to visuals in some way, let's say. There is also a need from a small review of the literature that I have done with a colleague. There is a need to focus more on the visual. Most of the published research on Instagram Flick are using basically the additional metadata related to the pictures, but very little research is actually using the picture itself. Why? Because most of the researchers are not trained for that. So we are seeing that sociologists, anthropologists are more used to this type of studies because they use more interpretivist paradigms. So this is something that maybe those who are more oriented towards the objective of the positivism should try to learn, let's say, or should try to combine. Researchers of different paradigms can also collaborate in this sense and look at different aspects, so that research can become more dynamic and more fruitful. There is also opportunity for industry. The industry has certainly availability of digital traces, as we scholars do, and the industry has also their own databases and their own information systems. So they can combine different type of data, and this can be done not only in terms of profitability, marketability, competitiveness, but can be used also in the cases in which we need to do demand predictions, we need to do studies for emergencies. So these are situations which we could combine also the visual big data with the company database and information systems. Last but not least, there are also certain challenges that scholars have to face. First of all, as some of the research shows, there is a need for more systematic work in visuals. Having a big data set of Instagram pictures is not enough to have a visual research. So there are very good books, the Rakic and Chambers, for example, manual. This is all dedicated to visual methods, but there are also many other visual methods resources available from sociologists and other scholars. What I suggest in particular is that academia tries to focus from the use of big into the use of smart, use the data in a smart way, which means we can look into more layers of information. We can team up with different scholars of different disciplines. Scholars who have more or less technical skills, and qualitative and quantitative skills could be combined. So all of this is a way to do better and not just bigger research. And last point is about the ethical concerns that are often not acknowledged in visual research that has been published. And this acknowledgement is very important. We need to acknowledge, but also we need to take actions, because some of these pictures are certainly publicly available, but the use we do as a researcher is a little different, and we need to discuss and document how these approaches the ethical and the privacy concerns of those who are in the pictures in some way or have taken the pictures. So thank you for your attention. List of useful references for our attendees, and again, thank you for having me at this conference.
Thank you, Professor Volo. You encourage the academicians to change their way of standard thinking and benefiting from the visual data to study on, but from a smart perspective. Thank you. I have taken very precious notes. And now we will turn to Professor Nina Katrina Prebensen. She will be talking about resilient tourism innovations, and let's listen how a system may maintain the identity, the structure, and the function in the face of disturbance. Yes, Professor, now it's your turn.
Thank you. Did I share this? Did you see that? Just.
No, there is nothing shared yet.
Nothing shared yet. So where do I do
click
it?
on the green screen, share screen.
Yes.
Then you need to click on the one of the screen that you would like to share.
Yeah, I did, but Wow.
Do you see the green screen in Zoom?
Let's see. Yes, there. You see something now?
Yeah, it's coming. And now we see it. We see the PowerPoint.
The whole one, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not very used to Zoom yet. But what I'm going to talk about is, and also thank you for inviting me to it. And it has been very nice to listen to the presenters before me. Thank you. I was thinking about, I was working a little bit about starting on the sustainable, responsible tourism things, and then I moved a little bit to resilient tourism innovations, and I just want to make some reflections about it. So, of course, increased uncertainty about timing of major disturbances and how these disturbances may spread. It is of particular concern to socioeconomic industries and sectors that depends on the flow of people and money from distant parts of the globe, such as the global tourism industry. So this keynote will be about resilience, sustainability, responsibility, innovations in tourism, value and value creation, which I have been working a bit on before, and hopefully some lessons to learn from the presentation. So first of all, what is resilience? How can we see resilience? And also it's very related to the sustainability and responsibility area, but it's addressing the dynamics and development of complex social ecological systems. And it also can be seen as integrated system of ecosystems and human society with reciprocal feedback and interdependence. So it's about humans in nature perspective. And of course, in Norway, we are doing a lot of nature-based tourism, so it's very important to understand it. So resilience in this context is the capacity of the system to continually change and adapt, yet remain within critical thresholds. So it's the capacity of the system to absorb disturbance and reorganize while undergoing change, so as to still retain essentially the same function, structure, and feedbacks, and therefore identity. That is the capacity to change in order to maintain the same identity. And we want to change to keep up the same picture identity. So, and adaptability is part of resilience. It represents the capacity to adjust responses to changing external drivers and internal processes, and thereby allow for development along the current trajectory. And the transformability is the capacity to cross thresholds into new development routes. So as you see, this is slightly different, but it's very related to the sustainability and responsibility concepts. So this is just a picture I took from the Google picture. It's actually about a lot of interrelated topics and elements. It's however, it's about surviving in a way, how to deal with the big issues. So, and adaptability captures the capacity of a system to learn, combine experience and knowledge, adjust its responses to changing external drivers and internal processes, and continue developing within the current stability domain or basin of attraction. So it has been defined as the capacity of actors in a system influence resilience. What I think when I'm going into this big area is huge. It's actually in my interest is linked to institutional theory, new marketing logics, actually, because when you look at it, it's actually looking at the systems and the relationship between the systems. And one of the big things that is important to acknowledge is that we have an issue combining the overall policies with business policies and the individual. We have not captured that the responsibility of the individual in this whole resilience, sustainability topics. And I really liked the presentation earlier about that. So we need to find out what is the responsibility for each and every one of us. So in practice, resilience is sometimes applied to problems relating to particular aspects of a system that might arise from a particular set of sources or shocks. And it can be and that is specified resilience. In other cases, the manager concerned more about resilience to all kinds of shocks, including completely novel ones. So it's more general. And of course, if you look at COVID and all the things that happen so sudden or not so sudden, we have viruses every year. Yeah. So, but this was maybe harder. But if you look at Corona as a pandemic shock, we can see before COVID-19, we were concerned about climate change, globalization, over-tourism, mass tourism, and also the price, how to earn a lot of money, where should we put the price? And we saw the increase in lower rates on airplanes and other, living conditions. So this was the big topics. And then maybe it's kind of changes towards viruses as a phenomenon. More in Norway, at least, we're very concerned about local, national visitors. How can we attract them to be here and to spend their money here? Regionalism, and maybe more on revenue management, value, not from, value for money towards value for, the experience in social value, other types of value. So this is also coming up more. And to ensure certain number of tourists, the right tourists. So this is probably some dimension that we could look at in this resilience topic. And I was thinking, can we compare it to the boiling frog as a fable describing a frog being slowly boiled alive? The premise is that if a frog is put suddenly into boiling water, it will jump out. But if the frog is put in tepid water, which is then brought to a boiling slowly, it will not perceive the danger and will be cooked to death. Both situations may, however, be fatal if not dealt with. So we need to look at it and think about time and awareness as very, very important issues when it's come to sustainability, responsibility, and resilience. So, and then I looked at the literature in 2019, and I saw here is just a slightly overview, and I saw we were a lot working on climate change, and naturally enough, so it's of course that was an issue, and it still is, and the resident visitor relations in over-tourism, as earlier also mentioned, and the psychological resilience, organizational resilience, and life satisfaction in tourism firms. So these were the issues related to resilience in 2019. Of course more, but this is the main topics. And I wanted to share with you in October 2019, I was in Namur in Belgium and had a keynote speak. And my speak was about sustainable tourism. And in order to combat overcrowdedness, CO2 emissions, etc., we need to understand what drives tourists to become sustainable, responsible. And then I was thinking maybe now we need to understand, you know, what hinders people to become sustainable, responsible, or resilient, work with resilience. So this was the major topics that I discussed then. And of course, they are still very much important to discuss how we can nudge people or regulate people in terms of shorter travel distances, because that is the big thing in sustainability. We are traveling too far and too much. So at least with the current CO2 emissions in the airplanes, but we are not touching so much about it. But okay, let's travel by airplane, longer stay, you know, short, you know, fewer travels but longer stay. We need to go into waste management and the use of nature, and prices, taxes. How can, if we increase prices and taxes, we will reduce demand. That's, you know, that's the topic. So in tourist research, we needed to understand antecedents of responsible, sustainable tourist behavior. So, and also the direct versus the indirect effects of how to behave, how we behave. So as firms and teachers, we need to know how to facilitate for sustainable tourist behavior, in addition to know how the firm can behave in a sustainable, responsible way. So this was the October keynote. And today I need to think, what drives tourist consumer behavior today? And fear is, of course, very, very clear. It is all over the place. We are afraid. People are very much afraid. So why, we can discuss why. I think it has been too much information, and the information hasn't been too clearly and too solid enough. But anyway, and also, of course, there's social issue and economic issues because when I say that prices and taxes, if you raise them, you will reduce demand, but that has some impacts, of course. Should we on the other side regulate that you can take one vacation a year or one travel a year? So this is political issues that we need to address. And then to the topic of experience value, which I used the utility theory from 71. I went into value perceptions and tourist experience value. I think we need to address that much more. What do we value while we're traveling, and how can we nudge people to value the things that we like to present? It's not easy to understand, but I think we need to have a more holistic view of value in a tourism context. And then I want to present emotions as a key here, because it's about, we search for stability versus change. And if we look at stability, we can link it to hedonic feelings, the hedonic emotions, which is about pleasure, happiness, satisfaction. And when a need is fulfilled or a goal has been accomplished, happens during behavior that is familiar and easy. Laying on the beach, it's typical hedonic emotion that occurs. And then we have eudaimonic feelings, which is interest, immersion, engagement, which happens during the pursuit of a goal and in attempts to overcome obstacles. And it happens in activities such as struggle to learn a difficult skill and to explore unknown territories. So these two emotions we need to go look more closely into, and we have done so and presented or tested some different effects of behavior in that terms. So hedonic emotions tend to affect positive on word of mouth, and that's good. However, we measured with tourists visiting in Norway, when they did feel eudaimonic emotions, it's not only affecting positive on word of mouth, but also intention to revisit. And we were concerned about revisiting and what's happening, because that's a much cheaper way to marketing and all these things. But what's interesting here is that we should look further into this and see how can we ensure a more resilient tourism industry looking at hegemonic emotions. So this is the new thing I would suggest PhD students could go into. So what is key again is the knowledge and skills key for resilient tourism innovation models. So we need to analyze and plan and collaborate and to ensure flexibility, you know, in terms of seasons, places, activities to become more resilient. And the new business models should include value for the tourism. And then, of course, as we see here today, new experience platforms. How can we combine online and on-site platforms in terms of providing authentic and good and nice experiences for people? Is it possible? How much could we do for on each of everyone? So then I think the lessons to learn, I will not repeat that adaptability captures, but it's about knowledge and learning and include it to internal processes. But we need to look at the new business models, including digital elements. We need to look at how we can reduce travels to shorter travels, local markets, national tourists. And we need to increase prices to reduce number of travels in the long run. At the moment, I'm working very closely with the hotel chains, and they say they are losing so much money, not only because they have few tourists, but they need to reduce the prices so much that the revenues are very bad. So, so these things that we need to look into that, and maybe we could focus on clean and safe travels more than before because we are aware of all this. Focus on eudaimonic emotions, learning, immersion, engagement, responsibility, and also maybe health-related travels. Maybe people are more concerned about. We know that, for instance, the effect of virus is very high on people who eat bad and wrong and get fat. You know, all these bad things, and I will not go into that. But how can we change our attitudes and behaviors in terms of health care for ourselves? These are what I had today. So this is from the island outside in the winter time. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. You highlighted the adaptability for surviving. So we need to really think about the new business models. And also we need to focus more rather than hedonic emotions. I totally agree with you. And now the last but not the least, our final keynote speaker is Professor Dr. Cihan Çobanoğlu. His presentation is on smart tourism, and I'm looking forward to benefiting from your experience and ideas. And the scene is yours.
Thank you so much, Professor. I appreciate it. Just like all the keynote speakers, I'm very happy to be here. Of course, I would have loved to be in person right now, but that's not possible. So we are still very happy to be here with you. Can you see my screen? I shared the PowerPoint with you. Okay, perfect. I see that. So Smart Tourism Opportunities and Challenges is the title of my presentation. Here, what I would like to discuss with you is that when I say smart and technology, what I really mean is not like high technology computers and stuff. The way that I define technology always is any tool or technique that allows us to do something more efficiently, cheaper, faster, is defined as technology. Smart also, you will see how I defined it in my presentation. You know, about a year ago, we have done a study from the M3 Center at the University of South Florida about the top 10 hospitality and 2030 trends, right? This is before Corona. Sustainable tourism was number 1. Technology was number 2. Experience tourism was number 3. Innovation was number 4. Security and safety, 5. Personalization. Artificial intelligence and robots were number 7. sharing economy. Look, over tourism was number 9, and alternative tourism was number 10. Over tourism. Don't you wish that we still talk about over tourism? Now there's no tourism, right? Or there's under tourism, whatever. So this has changed now. When you come into same trends in 2020 after post-corona world, that change every single thing that we used to know about hospitality and tourism. Now number 9 is alternative tourism, which used to be number 10, and wellness tourism now came into this particular list. By the way, this is not my list, but this is a list of variety of different think tanks that we have done, also survey among the hospitality professionals, etc. But just like anybody now know in the world that it's a different world, and of course travel and tourism industry is hit the hardest by coronavirus. So I'm not going to bore you with all these statistics that you already know, you feel when you go to the hotels, restaurants, that you see everywhere. Entire spectrum of hospitality and tourism and travel industry has been impacted by it. So, but we are a resilient industry, just like our keynote speakers have already mentioned this several times, that we adapt and technology also adapt. Restaurants are closed, hotels are empty, maybe working with 10, 20% occupancy. You see signs after this, like airlines have been, one of our visiting scholars, Sedan Doğan, actually, she's one of the hosts today, just returned, and she showed us the picture of the plane. It was like almost empty. So it's heartbreaking at a time, but like I said, we are adapting, and there's new normal. There used to be a series in MSNBC before called The New Normal, but now this become a reality. So when you look at the ecosystem of smart ecosystem, that you see variety of different things. You see the smart governments, smart environmental and natural resources management, urban development, society and community. Underneath this whole ecosystem, there are little pieces of even smart agriculture and food. You are hearing every single day, and etc. We are going to look at smart tourism underneath this. When you look at the smart tourism here, let me just hide this control. When you look at the smart tourism, look at the tourist attractions, travel agents, restaurants. Let's see how this all works. Now, obviously everybody is creating their own buzzword, but my buzzword is called Tourism 3.C. Tourism first was the regular tourism that we know before all the mass communication devices that we have. Tourism 2.0 is with the web-enabled, mobile-enabled, smartphone-enabled tourism that we shared, like peer-to-peer accommodations, Uber, etc., came into the picture. Now Tourism 3 actually was supposed to be AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, supported tourism, but now we are adding the C into the mix, and let's see how that impacts contactlessness, right? I always tell people that whenever you deal with technology, whatever that you do, you should not assume that people are going to accept it. For example, mobile entrance to the hotel, just because you offer it doesn't mean that everybody will wants to accept. There's a lot of research about technology acceptance model. So I always a big proponent of actually giving customers, giving employees, giving all stakeholders options, not just one, but many. Look, this is Thai dancers actually utilizing a small, we can call this technology, even though it's not computers, hardware, just to give that psychological, comfort to their spectators here. Another one, again, all the hotels have done similar things with the plexiglass to be able to create this kind of like a sense of security for their guests over there. Look, this particular hotel in Las Vegas has implemented these low-tech solutions to be able to open the doors. This is how it works. I don't know if you can hear the sound, but allow me just 1 second, because I probably did not choose. Let me just choose share screen here, and I'm going to, you can see the screen. Hopefully you will be able to hear the sound as well. There you go. This is very simple, step and pull, just to get rid of that contact. you can see the person comes and opens the door. And a lot of hotels, restaurants, tourism attractions are utilizing these thermal cameras again to give people the sense of security that they are checking for people that have high fever. There are different ones. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time. There is another technology that allows actually not only scan the body temperature, but also look, it scans blood oxygen levels, external body temperature, elevated heart rate, respiration rate. Looks like almost like you're going to a hospital, right? So that's changing. Zapping germs. We are seeing actually company after company that are creating ultraviolet lights to be able to kill the germs in a hotel room where people have this really trouble of watching. Here's an example.
Can be a hot zone of bacteria. After all, you're
See, this
sharing the same
hotel is
space a
using this
complete
technology.
stranger was using the day before.
It's very important to us that our guests feel
When
safe and
people
secure.
go
And
into
when
a
you're
hotel,
in a
you
medical
will see in a
center,
second, and I
germs
will.
can lurk around every corner, but that's where Xena comes in.
There you go.
We're the first hotel in the country to implement a UV light robot zapping, germ zapping robot here at the hotel.
And this is how it works. Xena is strategically positioned inside hotel rooms of this Westin location. The robot raises up to about
Here's
6 feet
inside
high,
the
and
room
that's when
of a
the
guest room.
germ-killing party starts, so to speak.
And you can see, again, I'm just to make the point, smart payment systems. We already know, at least for US is behind us. China has been leading in smart payment systems. For those of you who've been to China or from China, you probably know that you can utilize your mobile device to pay for anything, into a level that I was walking on the streets of Beijing a couple of years ago. A beggar come to me and asked for money. I didn't have any RMB on me, and he told me that, do not worry, here, scan my code, and you can just give the people money with this way, just like you are seeing it here, that come to this level. Again, this is in the light of contactless payments, but it's going to, the interesting thing about WeChat, this is the platform that they are using mainly, is ubiquitous. Almost everybody, 1 billion people, more than 1 billion has and utilizing. This is a QR code. If you were to scan this in your screens, you are going to go to my website for my contact information, etc. That you see this more and more. Look, one company, just after the Corona happened, this actual video is very tacky. I don't like the video, but I like the idea that this allows people in a restaurant to be able to, of course, see the menu, order from the menu, and then pay afterwards, but take it to the next level. Actually, you can see what other people have ordered before you. And the guest can also rate the items. Then you can even see the highly rated items, etc. You can see here, very short video, that this company is good technology, but the video is awful, in my opinion.
Are your peak hours too crazy? And you, does waiting and ordering take too long?
So this is again talking about ordering process.
Use Beep.
People
just scan, order, and pay. Like this.
Right here. And again, I'm going to cut this for the time being. Weebee is actually a Turkish company that allows guests to check into the hotels without, again, any kind of key, contactless entry to the room, open your room door, order laundry, room service, etc. Everything that you can imagine you can do with their app. Very successful, to a level that we don't even need to use a mobile phone soon. Look, this wearable technology actually allows you to mirror, project this smartphone on your arm, on your body. So we'll be able to do this. Again, this is, look, here, very interesting. You're inside the bathtub, but yet you can use this. Imagine where we are going to go. This is a toilet. I'm sure that all of you have seen this or heard of it. Maybe it's funny. People usually smile when I show them this picture, because after you do your business, this toilet cleans you. But actually now it does more than just cleaning. Look, this is actually a lab. Imagine that you're going to a health lab where you do your urine test or stool test. It actually does it every time you use the toilet. We are going to utilize these in our rooms. in the hotel rooms, in our homes, etc. Cambridge
At
University
the Royal
actually developed
Society's
this
Summer
particular
Science
technology.
Exhibition in London,
If you look at this video,
researchers
you'll see that
explained the
as
technology
you
might help
actually,
people
you know, of course,
self-diagnose conditions,
this
alter
particular
medication
technology
levels,
will have face recognition. So when you go into the toilet, you're going to look at the toilet, it will recognize who you are. Then after you do the business, it will send you the results. If your results are not good in a 5-day period consecutively, it's actually going to call your doctor and make an appointment for you. So it's really
perhaps even
amazing
lower
where
their
technology
insurance
is going now.
premiums.
You can see
What we
this,
want to
this
see
actual
is-
researcher is explaining how this is working. Robots are being utilized in hotels for a long time. It's not new. But now with Corona, you see that they are actually helping. Look, the robot with a mask that actually they are helping with the hotels that host the patients of the Corona virus. You can see
The
here,
Tokyo Metro.
and again, robots are utilized in restaurants. This is a very beautiful restaurant in the front end. Obviously, it's empty, very beautiful sunset, as you can see here. But when you look at the Flippy on the backside, I am also checking my time at the same time to be able to not go over my time. Flippy actually cooks the burgers. You can see here how it works. This looks like a human, but actually it's a robot. So we are going to utilize this more and more because of the contactless, but also saving the jobs before the Corona, and now it's going to be different. In India, there is also restaurants that are utilizing robots as servers. Again, will this go to a level that will make people comfortable, or in terms of saving cost, we will have to see. That's research point here for academicians to handle. You will be able to see this again, Chenna. And of course, you probably have seen many times Hotel Hanna in Japan. They utilize robot check-in clerks, although they fired them because it was so expensive to maintain them as opposed to cost saving. So we'll get to see, again, another research topic for us. The one on the right here, Royal Caribbean Cruises. This was the robotic actually bartender. For those of you who've been to Royal Caribbean, may have even get a drink from this robot. On the one left, that's our chef, actually cooks for us in China. And there is more and more technology companies are generating these robots to be able to save cost. And of course, now they are marketing themselves in the Corona, contactless cooking, contactless serving. This is a self-cooking machine. As you can see, it does everything by itself. You know, this is interesting. This is interesting because it can actually cook mass for mass people at the same time. Haidala, again, for those of you from China may know this famous hot pot restaurant. They are utilizing robots for a long time. The way that, you know, people in hot pot concept, you order a lot of different ingredients. Usually they are small portions and they bring it to you. You cook in the middle of this hot pot, just like you see in this video here. But again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to show the entire video. Anybody who's interested, I'll be happy to share these videos with you. I have a longer version. Usually it takes about an hour. So look, this is actually a screenshot that I got in 2016. We are in 2020. So 4 years ago, all of hotels were actually working on voice technologies for the guests to be able to control everything in the room by their voice. And again, another one from 2017. Today, those become more kind of like front of the burner technologies for hotels. Smart cities. Look, this is the street lights that just doesn't give light, but also allows you to get traffic in for parking availability, surveillance for security, weather quality, etc. And there are several cities actually implemented this already. And if you're looking for a parking place, these smart technologies are going to allow you to actually go specifically where there is parking, so that will save you. For disability travelers, these kind of like smart technologies, which is the Internet of Things that allows you to be able to connect together, will actually connect you to the street lights so that the person who is handicapped can actually have enough time to pass the street here. Water sensors in the cities, so that instead of watering everywhere or in golf courses, that takes a lot of, from the sustainability perspective, this is one of the examples that are given as a bad example, all the golf courses, that this actually technology senses the humidity in the air, also works with the weather forecast and adjusts the level how much to water these greens based on this technology. Air conditioning, this is what we know, very ineffective, right? This is split systems. Many of you have this in your homes or workplaces, but now we have actually chiller systems. Chiller systems come from the idea of our ancestors. This is actually a picture of the underground city in Turkey, in Cappadocia. For those of you who've been there, maybe you may know that as you go under the city here, it gets colder. So this chiller technology is actually come from there. So our ancestors put their meat and milk under the ground to keep them cool because there was no refrigerators. Now we are doing the same thing. We actually bury tanks under the ground, put in water inside. It keeps them cool, very cold naturally without actually spending any energy. And then you just flow these cold water into your hot water that's sucked from the building, and you actually generate huge conversation in terms of air conditioning. This is robotic eel that is being placed in the beaches, in the drinking water reservoirs to be able to see. It tests the water on a real time, on a 24-hour basis. So you're not just relying on only one time, but this device takes the water, detects the water, and sends the report to, in this case, to the city officials or to tourists, so they can actually see what the results are. Another one in this particular drone is cleaning the Dubai sea in Dubai. You can see it works with sunlight, solar energy, and it cleans a lot of debris from the seas. Holograms are going to become more and more part of our actually life. And look at this example here. This lady has a device in her hand. Imagine what the shopping are going to look like soon with this technology. And we are seeing more and more examples. I'm going to show that to you in a second. I have 2 more minutes left. So just to show you that three-dimensional. Smart transportation, you already know Dreamliner, the first plane that is made of plastic. So it way less, so that it consumes less gas. Therefore, before Corona, the flights are actually getting cheaper. So we have long haul, cheap flight companies like Norwegian, etc. And of course, Elon Musk has this crazy idea of taking us from London to Sydney in 15 minutes with these rockets. And I think he's getting close to his goal. You can see that we are going to be able to actually go into the space soon.
CEO Elon
And
Musk
then
showed
you'll
a
be able to
demonstration of the
travel to
idea
any
on
place
stage at a space industry
under
conference,
1 hour
claiming that
in
it
the
will allow
world, any
passengers
place.
to
You
take
can see
most
his
long-distance trips.
concept. Of course, right now it's a prototype, but yet he has got successful air taxis. These are actually being utilized, tested in Dubai right now. We are going to see and more of this. You can see very simple example if actually this works. So this will be like a car. You'll be able to do it. I don't know if you heard, but FAA actually just approved the use of drones for Amazon just yesterday. Maybe you know it, and you can see how this is going to go. So we'll have carports, not airports, but carports. You'll drive. When you come to a location called carport, your car will turn into an airplane. 350 miles per hour. It's going to be amazing. Hyperloop. Many of you already have heard about this. This is the capsule that's sucked. It's going to reach the speed of the flights. Flights usually go with 1,000 kilometers per hour or 700 miles. This actually indeed is doing that. Autonomous cars, you already have seen. Tesla is doing it. Many companies are testing with it, but there is also a lot of research topics, ethics. People are researching, believe it or not, if an autonomous car were to kill somebody, who should it kill first? People are asking people, how can we program the autonomous car so if it's inevitable to kill somebody, should we kill? So people say that cats should go first, criminals should go second. Dog should go third, old woman, old man, homeless, large man. You know, it's sad to see this, but yet it's reality, right? That's becoming, so there's a lot of research. Of course, you know, this is Maslow's self-actualization, the hierarchy of needs, as you can see, but people are joking now, this has changed because now you have battery life and Wi-Fi comes before anything. But now everybody knows that health, right, comes before all of these. But yet, that reason, now you're seeing battery power outlets in hotels, restaurants, everywhere that you go, you are seeing more and more technologies like this. Wireless charging is now a reality. In the next 5-10 years, we will actually drop the cables. You are going to be able to charge all of your devices in a given place without any cables. You can see this. Again, I'm just cutting short. This is a solar technology that looks like a clear glass, but it generates power for your hotel room. Again, we are going to see more and more these technologies. Virtual reality, oh my God, this can be another presentation by itself, but you see more and more technologies like this, simple, such as you will be able to get a device like this and see the menu items. Very simple. Marriott already have actually tried to use in marketing for their other hotels to their guests. And look, in Venice now in the film festival, this is new, by the way, it's coming up, actually just happened, that they, for the first time, that they had a section for virtual reality as part of a film festival. Look at this. What you see here is a walk in the park. I want to show you a virtual reality video very quickly. Look at this. And I don't know, of course, in Zoom, can you hear the sound of walking? And you can even, now this company allows you to bring the smell. So you'll be in your room with your virtual reality that you'll walk in Central Park in New York. Not only you are going to feel everything, but you're going to smell whatever that the smell is replicated from there. So more and more, look at this lady. She's actually playing Pac-Man. Look how she's doing this by herself. So of course, in virtual reality, she's playing in a very small physical space, yet that she's feeling a very different experience. They are taking it to the next level. Look at this. Now with virtual reality, this gentleman could be handicapped, actually stuck in the shelves. Look at this. I'm almost done. I'm aware of my time here. This is going to really create a new opportunities for hospitality and tourism. Sedan Doğan and Mehtap, we are doing actually a research about hologram circuses. So there are people who go to circuses instead of using live animals, which, you know, gets a lot of criticism by some people, that they are actually using hologram technology. Look at this, another one. Look at how this mixed reality, you are in a arena that this, you can see this shark coming into there. Burger King just announced this. This is a couple of days ago. Actually, they are using this augmented virtual reality, augmented reality offering to people who are getting it. Augmented reality is getting more and more. Look at this wine.
Or the other
You can actually embed this augmented reality into wine bottles that will take you to the vineyard in Italy, France, wherever that the wine is produced. So you'll be able to actually get a very interesting level. Look, this is actually a touristic site. When you put your phone in there, you'll be able to see 1936. That street that you see in 1936. It will give you a different experience. France, Tour de France, very famous bicycle competition. Look what's going to happen. You're going to bring that to your living room.
Når det er vinden, den kommer derfra. Kør de den anden vej, så ligger på hjul.
In there. And look at this one. Again, augmented reality is entertainment business. Look at this person utilizing augmented reality, not dance partner. So it actually mirrors what we do, so you get a synchronized dancing experience. I will go, I'm almost finished. This is from yesterday. Drone delivery approved for Amazon. So we'll be able to get that drone. And in China, they've been using it. Is it a foul, or is it just a public relations stunt for Amazon? We'll yet to see. That's a lot of, I'm not even have time to talk about 3D footprinting in technology, but a lot of time people ask me, you, Jihan, talk about all these technologies. Are you for tourism or are you against tourism? Because you say machines, robots, augmented reality is going to replace human. I'm not. actually. What I'm saying that technology is here. You have seen how actually this Zoom, Teams, virtual, all these virtual meetings came into our life. And the majority of it is permanent. Even Corona finishes. Many of the stuff that we do today is going to be permanent in education, in business life. But the jobs are changing. They have created new jobs. Look at these. These are all from Edge Careers. Edge Careers is a hospitality career website where lists jobs. These jobs did not exist 10 years ago. Enterprise data applications engineers, e-commerce manager, events technology manager. In conclusion, technology is here. Corona actually made the digitization transformation only faster. We should not be scared of technology. It's going to get rid of some jobs, yes, but it's going to create a lot of different jobs. Thank you so much. And here's my contact information. If you want to scan this code, it will take you actually to my website where you can see all this information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Once again, I could benefit from your innovative point of view, but whenever I listen to you, I feel I know nothing about technology, but I'm really scared. This, where are we going? And as a member of X generation, I think I'm afraid I'm not smart enough to get used to those technologies. Okay, I think we have some questions. Now I'm passing the microphone to our lovely announcer, Dr. Doğan, in order to moderate the questions and answers. Yes, Seda.
Thank you, Professor. We would like to thank to all our distinguished keynote speakers for their presentations. We have questions for them. First question is for Professor Tanya Mihalic. The question came from one of our audience, Oskipar. Okay, there are debates about sustainability of tourism that includes many major disciplines such as environment, architecture, etc., which I agree. However, some say academics related to tourism might not be qualified to research on this topic, and there needs to be specialized researchers on these disciplines. And some say they simply can't handle issues solely related to tourism. How should we approach these topics?
Thank you very much for the question. It is the question that makes our life really, really hard. But the tourism is a multidisciplinary field, of course. I could answer this question very simply by saying I take the approach of the practical philosophy as per Aristotle, where in the antique, all the disciplines work together somehow in the framework of the philosophy. But I'm not going to do that. I am personally very much aware that as a woman, I can only marry one man at the same time in my lifetime. And I truly believe this is the same with the discipline. We as a researcher belong to a certain discipline that we have studied and that we follow. So, but the sustainability and sustainnomics as the science about sustainability is really a multidisciplinary issue. And we need all these different disciplines to be put together. But how if everybody is doing her own discipline? So in my research, I take perspective of my knowledge, which is economics, environmental economics, a little bit of sustainnomics as a general view, and welfare economics, and a little bit of management. So these are my competencies, and my research methods are coming from this point of view. In the sustainability and responsibility research, I am taking the economic and social welfare, because this has blended together performance view. The model that I have suggested to take the view, the multiple view, multidimensional view on the sustainability is really from a different disciplines. But I have only taken the elements where the majority of the researcher expertise is coming from, the psychology, sociology. I would never argue, because I go forward and I do the model that I tested. But for the indicators, in deep indicators, I will first follow the tourism-related literature on the sociology and philosophy. And I will leave it to the experts, I don't know, to define the statements, the indicators, whatever. Ideally, I would work with other people. I don't see no other way, but I would like just to emphasize the Professor Muna Shinge, who has invented the Sustainomics as the science of the sustainability, who is saying exactly that knowledge from the architecture, environment is mentioned here. It has to be represented in the science of the sustainability, because the most dangerous thing is to take the view of one discipline only. So what else can we do? So this would be my answer. Yes, from the standpoint of your own discipline, where you are competent, but nevertheless, tourism is very, very multidimensional, and we really need to find the language together.
Okay, thank you, Professor. We have also another question for you. The question is coming from Faizan Ali. How do you see the change in the paradigm in light of current situation of COVID-19, which, as per many experts, is going to stay for a long time? Do you think our view of over-tourism and mass tourism is going to change?
I hope it's not going to stay for such a long time, but who knows, maybe it will. The view on the mass tourism has been coded already in the tourism research and the tourism literature. This is not going to change, I mean, at a certain point of time. The view on the over-tourism and understanding as unsustainable tourism has already been coded in the literature as per today. If this is going to change in the future, I don't know, but I argue that the sustainability tourism paradigm needs to change, because this has been changing. But how long the COVID will stay and how different the tourism will be, maybe the smart tourism is one of the answers how we will go. Or this conference, look at this conference. Serena has mentioned, I want to visualize Antalya, I want to be there. I also want to be there, but we are in the cyberspace. And I really want to have a beer with Faizan Ali and to discuss this question in live at the conference. But we are in the virtual world. I don't know what is going to be happening, but it's going to be different, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we have questions related to technology. So I will ask these questions to Professor Cihan Çobanoglu. The question is coming from Dori Davari. She says, I agree technology is inevitable, but literally everyone is tired of COVID life and dealing so much with tech. I wonder what the respected presenters, especially Dr. Çobanoglu, think about people leading technology.